They guided the goat to the shade of the hut. As the sun was rising higher, Amechi fetched a length of rope and with great reluctance and apology fashioned a loosened tether around one of Uzoka's goat's leg and tied it to a post. It's just so you don't run off or get startled. Please understand, he said softly to her, feeling absurd for talking to his wife as if she were a pet, but she was a goat now, and goats could bolt or wander. Uzoka sat on the ground, the rope on her leg, looking utterly miserable. Her eyes did indeed leak tears, which was a disconcerting sight in a goat. Chibundu found herself feeling a touch of pity despite everything. Uzoka appeared so helpless and frightened at the moment. It was hard to reconcile this creature with the overbearing stepmother who had bossed her around just a day before. Nneka volunteered to stand guard and keep an eye on Uzoka for a short while. I will shoo away any curious neighbors, she offered. This news must be contained until you decide how to proceed. Perhaps consult quietly with one or two elders you trust, Amechi. Amechi nodded, rubbing his temples. Yes, maybe I should speak to the chief priest at the shrine or the oldest elder, Oboefildoka. But I'm afraid of what they might say. Chibono sat on a low stool, still in a bit of shock. There is also the matter of the taboo, Papa, she said slowly. What taboo? Nneka asked. The law, the custom about goats, Chibono clarified. In Ebenabo, no goats may be killed within the family compound, for goats carry the spirit of ancestors. It was an old saying that everyone knew, though rarely discussed. It had always been more of a cautionary proverb to treat animals kindly, especially goats, which were often used in sacrifices, and this seen as messengers to the ancestors. Amechi nodded. Yes, that's true, and in this case, literally might be an ancestor's doing or presence. Regardless, we couldn't harm Uzoka, even if he trailed off, not wanting to consider that anyway. Even if she was harsh, she was still his wife and a human soul. Uzoka bleated softly, looking grateful that at least no one had suggested harming her directly. The taboo would ensure her physical safety in the compound at least. But what then? They couldn't kill her, but they also couldn't keep living normally with her as a goat. Nneka sighed. She can't speak, but perhaps she can still understand us, Uzoka. She addressed the goat gently. If you understand, know that we will try our best to help you. But you also must know this happened for a reason. When a yam is rotten, the knife will find it. It was her way of saying that Uzoka's wrongdoings brought about this cutting punishment. Perhaps think if there is any atonement you can make, any remorse to show, so that the gods might have mercy. Uzoka blinked and lowered her head. She did feel remorse now, nothing like finding oneself in a goat's body to instantly reconsider one's life choices. If only she could speak and apologize outright, but she couldn't. She hoped her eyes conveyed it, and her docile behavior. Amechi looked at Chibundu. We should keep her out of sight, especially today. People will soon wonder where Uzoka is. What do we tell them? That was a real concern. In a tight-knit village, a missing person would quickly become everyone's business. If they said she was sick, people might come to visit. If they said she traveled, that would buy a little time. Maybe she went to visit a relative in another town for a few days, Chibundu suggested. Nneka nodded. Yes, that could work as a temporary story. She has kin somewhere else, right? Amechi thought. She has a cousin in a distant village that might hold if someone asks. But if she doesn't return soon, people will suspect something. We will deal with that later, Nneka said. For now, get her inside, maybe, perhaps in the storage, or somewhere comfortable where not everyone can see a goat tied up. I will go to my house and fetch some cassava peels and water for her. At the mention of food, Uzoka felt a wave of humiliation. Cassava peels? Those were things she used to feed to animals or toss away. Was she now to be fed scraps like a beast? But she was terribly hungry suddenly. The stress and transformation had drained her, and her new stomach crawled with hunger. Still, tears slid from her eyes as she acknowledged that she was an animal now, at least in form. Amici led the goat gently towards a small shed attached to the main hut where they stored grain and tools. It had enough space and light and would conceal her from casual view. He laid an old mat on the ground for her. I know it isn't much, he said softly. Chibundu stood by, watching silently. This morning was proving to be the strangest in her life. She felt like she was watching someone else's story, not living her own. When her father had guided Uzoka into the shade and stepped out, tying the door loosely shut, Chibundu hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. Papa, what will we do if she remains like this? How will we live? Amechi wiped a hand over his face. I don't know, Chibundu. I truly don't. But I promise you, I will not let you suffer like before, no matter what happens. This is a wake-up call for me too. He looked towards the shade with a mix of sorrow and stainness. Your stepmother, in whatever form, will have to change her ways if she returns to us. If she does not, we must think of ourselves as a family still. We will not abandon her, but we cannot let her terrorize us either. The word surprised Chibundu because it was the most firm thing she had heard her father say regarding Uzoka. It was unfortunate it took such an extreme to spark it. She simply nodded. Nneka returned with some boiled yam peels and cleaned water in a bowl. Amechi opened the shade door slightly and placed them inside. Uzoka, who had been lying on the mat, sniffled the air and eyed the offering. Her stomach overruled her pride. She got up and began to eat the soft yam peels. They were plain and unsalted, usually something she had fed to the pigs or goats. But to her goat palate now, they were surprisingly tolerable. Still, her cheeks, furry as they were, would have burned with shame if they could, as she ate like an animal. Amechi couldn't bear to watch and closed the shade door gently. Alright, Nneka said, I'll go to my house. Chibundu, you should continue your day as normally as possible to avoid raising suspicion. Go fetch water or firewood like you usually do in the morning. If anyone asks about Uzoka, say she went to see her cousin who just had a baby or something like that. Chibundu agreed. Some normalcy would be welcome to calm her nerves. She picked up the water pot which she had left by the kitchen earlier. Her mind was still buzzing. Before leaving the compound, she paused and looked at her father. He gave her an encouraging nod. Go on, I will be here. She walked out towards the stream, the same path she had taken just yesterday morning when life was still normal. How changed everything was in the span of a single night. As she balanced the pot on her head, she couldn't help but wonder, was she wrong to have prayed for this? Would the gods be angered if she now felt partly regretful? But hadn't this also saved her from further abuse? Or had it just complicated life in a new way? Villagers she passed greeted her. Good morning, Chibundu. She forced smiles and greetings in return, trying to appear as if nothing was amiss. At the stream, the usual group of women were chatting. They beckoned her over. Chibundu, how are you? How is your father and your stepmother? One asked. The woman used stepmother. Chibundu swallowed and replied, Papa is fine. My stepmother traveled early today to visit a relative, so it's just us at home for now. Oh, traveled, I see, the woman said, exchanging a glance with another. I hope all is well. Yes, she just needed to help her cousin who had a new baby. Chibundu lied as evenly as she could. The women seemed to accept this. One chuckled. Ah, she will spoil the baby then. Uzoka loves to hold other people's infants. Chibundu just nodded. She filled her water pot quietly as the women continued gossiping about someone else. However, one of the girls from yesterday, Adoma, was there too, filling a bucket. She noticed Chibundu looked a bit uneasy and lingered behind as the women left. Softly, she asked, "Are you all right, Chibundu? You look tired or upset." Chibundu managed a smile. Adoma was a nice girl, but Chibundu could not share this secret with anyone. "I'm okay, Ada. Just have a lot on my mind. There was some trouble with a goat at home this morning," she offered. Which was true enough. "Oh, did he eat your vegetables?" Adoma giggled lightly. "No, it just caused a mess, but it's alright now." Adoma nodded, not pressing further. "Well, if you need anything, I'm here. I'm sorry you couldn't come last night. It was fun, but there will be other dances." "Thanks," Chibundu said softly. She realized with some wonder that perhaps now, without Uzoka controlling her every move, she might actually attend such events in the future. But that would depend on what happened with the current crisis. They parted ways, and Chibundu returned home with the water. Back at the compound, Amechi had composed himself a bit. He had gone into Uzoka's room and picked up some of her clothing that was strewn about from the chaos. He hid them away, so if anyone peeked in, they wouldn't see the scene of disorder. He also closed the windows and door to that room to prevent any wandering eyes. The morning passed slowly. Chibudu pretended to do chores around the yard, sweeping again, tending the chickens, but her mind was always on the shade where Uzoka was and what would happen next. Occasionally, she had faint shuffling or sniffling noises from within, and she couldn't tell if Uzoka was crying or just moving around. Amechi sat on a stool by the entrance of the hut, deep in thought. Neighbors who passed by and greeted him got a terse nod in return, and seeing he looked troubled, they didn't stop to chat long. He was known as a quiet man, so nothing unusual there. Finally, near midday, Amechi stood up and said quietly to Chibundu, "I'm going to see Ogbuefi Udoka. He's a wise elder. I will tell him something has happened and ask his counsel without naming names first. Perhaps he will have advice." Chibundu understood. "All right, Papa." She felt anxious being left alone with Uzoka, but Nneka had promised to drop by occasionally to check in. True to her word, the old lady peeked in through the gate just as Amechi was leaving to make sure all was well. "I will be quick," Amechi said, and with that he slipped out of the compound to find the elder. Nneka came in to sit with Chibundu, and together they waited under the shade of a tree in the yard. Nneka occasionally spoke through the shade door to Uzoka, not expecting an answer but perhaps to comfort her. "Uzoka, be patient. We are seeking a way to help you. Do not lose hope," she said loudly but kindly. The goat inside responded with a soft bleat. Chibundu wondered if Uzoka truly deserved that help, considering all she had done, but then she felt guilty for thinking that. Her heart was not naturally cruel, and despite everything, Uzoka was family now, however dysfunctional. Deep down, Chibundu knew she did not want her stepmother to suffer endlessly, even if a part of her felt some justice had been served. About an hour later, Amechi returned, accompanied by someone, Ogbuefi Udoka himself. He was one of the oldest men in the village, respected for his wisdom in traditional ways and knowledge. He walked slowly with a carved walking stick, and his eyes, though milky with age, were sharp with intelligence. Chibundu and Nneka quickly rose to greet him. They entered the compound quietly, and Nneka offered the elder a stool in the shade. Chibundu bowed her head in respect. "Good afternoon, Ogbuefi," she said. "Good afternoon, my child." The old man responded kindly, though he was addressing grown adults as children, in the way elders often did. His voice was low and a bit raspy. "Amechi here has told me there is a peculiar problem in this house." Amechi looked nervous and glanced at the shade. "Yes, Ogbuefi. It is my wife. Something has happened to her." Ogbuefi Udoka nodded. You speak of a transformation. Do not fear. I have seen or heard of such things before in my long life. This statement made all of them stare at him in surprise. He continued, it is not common, but when the gods are strongly moved by injustice or broken taboos, they can do the unimaginable. They all guided Udoka toward the shade. Amechi opened the shade door just enough for the elder to see inside. Chibundu and Nneka peeked in as well. Uzoka the goat was lying down but lifted her head as they appeared, recognizing the elder. She felt both hope and shame. Slowly, she got up and stepped a little into the light. Ogbuefi Udoka looked at the goat for a long moment, taking in details, the tear-stained fur on its face, the anxious yet intelligent flicker in its eyes, the uneasy shifting on its legs that suggested a human-like awareness of being appraised. He nodded, as if confirming something inwardly. It is as I thought, he said quietly. This is indeed your wife, transformed by powerful forces. Uzoka made a small bleating sound and bowed her head slightly, as if acknowledging the elder's pronouncement. Amechi let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, even though he had accepted it earlier. Having it validated by Udoka made it undeniably real. Can it be undone, Ogbuefi? He asked pleadingly. The old man stroked his white beard thoughtfully. All curses or punishment can be undone, but usually there is a condition. We must discern what the spirit wants. In cases I know of, either the person atones for their wrongs, or the one who appealed to the divine must offer forgiveness or a specific appeal for mercy. He turned his cloudy eyes toward Chibundu. Child, your father told me that you have been mistreated and that you prayed for help last night. Chibundu tensed, not used to being the focus of such discussions. Yes, Ogbuefi, she said softly. I did pray under the sacred tree. I was very sad and begged the gods to help me. Udoka nodded. The gods had a sincere and aggrieved cry. They have provided justice in this form. Now, the path forward depends on your heart as well. He looked at Uzoka meaningfully, and also on hers. He motioned them all to gather closer to him, which they did, forming a small circle in the yard. Even Uzoka stepped out of the shade fully, rope dragging on the ground. Nneka untied it to allow her freedom to move. The ghost stood quietly by Chibundu, as if awaiting judgment. Udoka spoke in a measured storytelling tone. Long ago, in our people's law, there was a woman who was very cruel to her younger brother. She beat him and stole his inheritance. The boy went to the shrine of Annie, the earth goddess, and wept for justice. The next morning, that woman was nowhere to be found, and in her place was a large python coiled around her belongings. The village was terrified, but an elder interpreted it as Annie's judgment, for the python is sacred to her. Only one thing could be done. The boy, seeing the python with tears in its eyes, like his sister would have, took pity. Despite all the cruelty he suffered, his heart was gentle. He went to the priest and said he forgave his sister and begged Annie to turn her back. He even offered to share his inheritance with her, to show his sincerity. Moved by his compassion, the goddess allowed the python to shed its skin, and the woman emerged human again. She returned humbled and became a kind sister thereafter. Chibundu and the others listened rapidly. The story clearly mirrored their situation, and its lesson was not lost on any of them. Udoka then continued, speaking more directly. Chibundu, the spirits have done their part by punishing wrongdoing, but they also value mercy and the goodness of one's heart. If you believe your stepmother has learned and truly repents in her soul, you may pray for her to be restored. But It must be with a clean heart, free of hatred. If you do not, if you choose to leave her like this eventually, the gods will still have their way. Perhaps her spirit will be taken away, or she'll remain a goat forever, and your family will be shattered, and your own heart might harden with time, carrying bitterness. You have power here, the power of forgiveness. Likewise, he looked at Uzoka. You, the one who was punished, must show true remorse. Without that, any return to human form might be short-lived or empty. Chibundu lowered her eyes. It was a heavy responsibility placed on her shoulders. Essentially, the decision to redeem Uzoka or not lay with her heart. She felt Uzoka's gaze in her. She glanced up and indeed saw the goat watching her with pleading, remorseful eyes, tears brimming again. It was one of the strangest sights imaginable, but the emotion there was unmistakable. Nneka, arms folded, asked bluntly, how can we know she repents? People can pretend, even in goat form, maybe. Udoka gave a slight smile. True, but the heart speaks in more ways than words. From what I see, he nodded toward Uzoka. I think she has been shocked into humility. The proud person I knew Uzoka to be is gone, at least for now. Of course, it is ultimately Chibundu who must sense it and decide, and also Uzoka must carry this lesson all her life if restored. Amechi put a hand gently on Chibundu's shoulder. My daughter, I will support whatever you decide. I know what she did to you was terrible. If you choose not to ask for a change, no one would blame you after what you have endured. He said it, but there was a pleading in his own voice too. Amechi loved his wife in his way, and he clearly hoped for her to return. Yet, he didn't want to force Chibundu. Uzoka let out a despairing bleat and moved to Chibundu, lowering her head at the girl's feet. She even licked the dust near Chibundu's toes, a gesture of begging that made Chibundu step back in surprise. The proud Uzoka doing this? It was unthinkable until now, but here it was. The goat then looked up at her, and although no words came out, everything about her posture spoke of apology and supplication. Chibundu felt a lump in her throat. Despite her lingering hurt, her nature was not one to delight in revenge. She had only wanted the suffering to stop, not to destroy her stepmother. And here was Uzoka, brought lower than Chibundu ever imagined, silently begging for mercy. Tentatively, Chibundu reached out and touched the goat's head, between the horns, where Uzoka's familiar hair would have been. If I forgive her and ask the gods to return her, would things really change? She asked softly, voice trembling. Udoka nodded. That depends on both of you. But if she ever returned to her wicked ways, who knows if the gods will be so patient a second time? Likely not. She knows that now. She cast a stern glance at Uzoka. Amechi added quietly, and I promise I will never turn a blind eye again, Chibundu. I will be the father you need. If she ever mistreats you again, I will be there. But I have a feeling she won't. He looked at Uzoka with a mixture of hope and pain. Uzoka looked between Amechi and Chibundu, then fervently shook her goat head, as if to say, never, never again. She then pressed her head gently against Chibundu's legs, in a gesture of affection and apology combined. Chibundu's tears fell down. All the resentment and anger she had built up started to melt, replaced by a cautious hope and a sense of relief. Holding grudges was heavy. Letting go felt like setting down a heavy basket she had carried for a long time. Nne, she said softly, using Nne for the first time in a very long time. I forgive you. I will ask the gods to forgive you too. The goat made a sound that was half sob, half grateful bleat, and nuzzled against her as if in thanks. Chibundu managed a small smile through her tears and stroked Uzoka's square's fur reassuringly. Ogbuefi Udoka smiled at this, his wrinkled face gentle. Then, it is settled. We should perform a prayer and offering at the sacred tree, where the plea was first made. The sun is already past its peak. By sundown, let us hope things will be set right. They agreed that a ritual should be done properly. Udoka instructed Amaechi to bring a white hen, a symbol of purity and sacrifice, and some kola nuts as offerings for asking forgiveness. Also, a bit of palm wine for libation. These were standard offerings when making peace with offended spirits. Amaechi hurried to gather what was needed. Nneka offered a healthy white hen from her coop and quickly fetched it. Chibundo brought out a small gourd of palm wine from her father's store and a few kola nuts from their kitchen. Fortunately, in a traditional village like theirs, these items were readily at hand. When everything was ready, they prepared to go to the iroko tree. The group was kept small to avoid attracting attention. Ogbuefi Udoka led the way, followed by Amaechi, carrying the hen and the offerings in a bowl. Chibundo walked beside the goat, Uzoka, with one hand, lightly on her back for comfort. Nneka accompanied them as well to support Chibundo and help keep watch. But she kept a little behind, ready to divert any passerby who got too interested. They timed it during the quiet slow of late afternoon, when many villagers were resting indoors to avoid the heat. Thus, the streets were fairly empty as they moved toward the sacred tree. Anyone who saw them might have assumed they were simply taking a goat to pasture or a family going to offer normal prayers. At the foot of the iroko, the air felt cool and still. This was the very spot where Chibundo had poured out her heart the night before. She felt a strange sensation returning, like an invisible audience was gathering around them, listening. Perhaps the ancestors were truly here, watching how this drama would resolve. Udoka began by drawing some lines in the earth around them with his staff, marking a sacred space. He had Amaechi and Chibundo kneel near the base of the tree and indicated that the goat should be right beside Chibundo. Uzoka obeyed, kneeling on her front legs, bowing her head low. Amaechi presented the white hen to the elder. Udoka held the hen and spoke aloud. Ancestors of Ebenabo, spirit of the land, we call on you, you who delivered justice last night. We now ask for mercy. Behold the innocent child who cried to you. She has been had. Behold the wrongdoer. She has been punished. Now, the innocent offers forgiveness, and the wrongdoer offers repentance. Chibundo kept her head bowed and eyes closed, listening to the elder's strong voice resonate. Udoka continued, raising the hand towards the sky. If it pleases you, O God of our land, restore what has been broken. Let this woman regain her human form, and let this family be whole again in peace. As we sacrifice this hen, accept it as a token of our sincerity and gratitude. With a swift motion, Udoka laid the hen on its side, and using a sharp knife Amaechi handed him, he sacrificed the hen cleanly. Chibundo flinched at the sound and tightly shut her eyes, but she did not run. She knew this was part of the process. The hen's blood spilled onto the roots of the tree. Udoka carefully set the hen aside to be buried later, as was custom for such rites. Next, Udoka took the kola nuts. He broke them and offered peace in the 4 cardinal directions around the tree, speaking as he did. We offer the kola, food of the ancestors. May our prayer be accepted. He motioned for Chibundo to speak from her heart now. Chibundo lifted her face, tears still on her lashes, and spoke softly but clearly, choosing her words so that her own heart could express fully. Great gods and beloved ancestors, I thank you for hearing me last night. You saw my pain and you answered. I have suffered. But I do not want my stepmother to suffer forever because of me. I have forgiven her from my heart. Please forgive her too. Please make her as she was before. No, make her better than she was before, with a kind heart. Give us back our family, and I promise to remember your mercy as long as I live. Amechi added in a trembling voice, Ancestors, I ask you as well. I have learned my lesson too. I'll be a better man, a better father and husband. Please have mercy on us. Thank you for correcting our wrongs, and thank you for bringing love back into our home. Udoka nodded approvingly. He then poured the palm wine on the ground as libation, saying, Spirits, drink and be satisfied. Wash away the past conflicts with this drink. Let harmony return. The group fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts and prayers. The forest seemed to hold its breath once more. A gentle breeze arose, stirring the branches of the great tree. A few dry leaves fluttered down, one brushing past Chibudu's shoulder, another landing on Uzoka's back. The breeze was warm and oddly comforting this time, not like the sharp gust of the previous night. Chibundu opened her eyes and looked at Uzoka. The goat was very still, eyes closed, as if deep in prayer herself. Chibundu reached out and held one of Uzoka's front legs gently. It will be okay, she whispered. After a minute, Uzoka announced quietly, It is done. He looked at Chibundu, Amechi, and then at the goat. Take her home now. Keep her in her room where she normally sleeps. By the time the moon rises, the transformation should be reversed. They thanked the elder profusely. Amechi offered to walk him back home, but Udoka shook his head. No need. I can find my way. This is a family matter now. He placed a hand on Chibundu's head in a grandfatherly gesture. You are a good child, Chibundu. Your kindness will not be forgotten by the gods. Go in peace, my child. He gave similar pats on Amechi's shoulder and even on the goat's back. Uzoka bowed low to him as he did, another sign of her humility. Nneka said her farewells too, promising to drop by in the evening to see how things went. She had tears in her eyes, touched by what she witnessed. Soon it was just father, daughter, and goat walking back to their compound. The sun was dipping westward, casting a golden glow over the trees. They walked slowly, each deep in thought but united in hope. Once home, they gently ushered Uzoka into her own room. Amechi removed the rope completely from her leg and brought in a basin of water so she could drink or wash her face. Chibundu fetched a light cloth and, after a moment's hesitation, gave the goat a tender wipe around the eyes and face to clean the tear streak and dust from the day's event. Uzoka closed her eyes gratefully at the gentle touch. They left a small oil lamp lit on a stool in the corner of the room so it wouldn't be dark, and then they stepped out, shutting the door to give her privacy. It felt strange, but they understood she might reappear unclothed or disoriented, and that would be delicate. Now, there was nothing to do but wait for moonrise. Twilight descended slowly, the sky turning hues of purple and deep blue. Father and daughter settled just outside the room, in the main living area of the hut. Amechi lit a lantern there as well, and for a while they sat in silence. Chibundu felt her heart pounding with anxious anticipation. Would it really work? She wondered. What if it doesn't? What if the gods decided Uzoka should stay an animal forever? She bit her lip, trying to push away those doubts. They had done everything they could. It was now out of their hands. Amechi gently put his arm around Chibundu. It was a comforting gesture, one Chibundu welcomed. She leaned against her father's side. They hadn't sat like this, close and at peace, for a long time. Despite the tension, it felt like having her old father back. They spoke in a low tones while waiting. Amechi quietly told Chibundu how proud he was of her strength and her forgiving heart. Chibundu shyly said she was just relieved things might change for the better. They even managed a small laugh when Amechi joked, Your mother, your real mother, must be up there, shaking her head that I let it get this bad. Then probably smiling that her daughter fixed it. Chibundo nodded, imagining her mother's gentle smile in the stars. After a long while of silence, during which the sky turned fully dark, and crickets sang their nightly chorus, they heard a noise from Uzoka's room. It was a low human-sounding groan, then a thud as if someone had fallen or collapsed onto the floor. Both of them shot to their feet. "Uzoka!" Amaechi called through the door softly. There was a shuffling sound, then that weak voice they had yearned to hear. "Amaechi." It was muffled by the door, but unmistakably Uzoka's voice, no longer a bleat. With a cry of relief, Amaechi pushed the door open, still mindful to keep his eyes averted just in case. There, lying on the mat on the floor, was Uzoka in her human form. She was coiled up, her clothes hanging loosely and torn from the transformation back. Her body covered in a sheen of sweat. She looked exhausted and was trembling slightly. Chibundo hung back a bit at the doorway, suddenly unsure, but Amaechi rushed in and grabbed a wrap from a peg, moving quickly to drape it around Uzoka. "Uzoka, you are back! Oh, thanks be to the gods!" he exclaimed. His voice choked with emotion. Uzoka blinked up at him. Her eyes were those of a frightened, chastened woman, not the fierce glare of yesterday. Tears spilled from her eyes and knew. "Amaechi, oh my husband," she whispered, reaching a weak hand towards him. He clasped hand tightly in both of his. "I'm here," he said softly. "You're all right now, just rest." Uzoka's gaze then shifted to the door, where Chibundo stood hesitantly. The older woman's face crumpled with sorrow and shame. "Chibundo," she said in a red voice, "my daughter, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She began to sob, covering her face with her free hand. All the pride and harshness was gone from her expression and tone. She looked utterly broken and remorseful. Seeing her stepmother, normally so composed and rigid, now weeping and apologizing was overwhelming for Chibundo. Chibundo stepped into the room and knelt on the other side of Uzoka, not too close, but near enough that Uzoka could see the forgiveness in her eyes. "Mama, it's all right now," Chibundo said softly. She used "mama" naturally, and it made Uzoka cry even harder, as though she didn't feel she deserved that title after what she had done. Amaechi gently helped Uzoka sit up and lean against him, then eventually onto the bed. She was weak, transforming twice in 24 hours, had clearly drained her. He wrapped the clothes properly around her to cover her and propped a pillow behind her back. Chibundo quickly brought the bowl of water from the floor. "Here, drink, ma," she offered, holding it up. Uzoka reached out with shaking hands. Amaechi had to help guide the bowl as she sipped. Water dribbled down her chin. Chibundo wiped it gently with the edge of the cloth. After a few moments, Uzoka managed to compose herself just enough to speak a little more steadily. She looked at Chibundo, eyes full of tears and regret. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You saved me. After all I did to you, you saved me." Chibundo shook her head, tears in her own eyes. "We saved each other, Mama. Now we can start again." Uzoka let out a soft wail and reached for Chibundo's hand. "Can you ever truly forgive me? I treated you so badly. I was blind and foolish and cruel." She squeezed Chibundo's hand weakly. "I don't deserve it, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness." Chibundo's throat tightened. The woman in front of her was almost unrecognizable as the same person who hurled insults at her daily. "I forgave you already," she said, voice quivering. "I forgave you when I saw that you truly regretted it. Let's just be family again." Uzoka nodded, sobbing quietly. "Yes, a family." She turned to Amaechi, who had tears in his eyes as well. "Amaechi, my husband, I am sorry I brought strife into our home. I'm sorry I made you choose between me and your daughter. I was wrong, so wrong." Amaechi embraced her lightly, mindful of her weakness. "We are both wrong, Uzoka, but it's over now. we have been given a second chance. They stayed together like that for a long while, the tension and fear slowly ebbing away, replaced by relief and gratitude. Chibundu brought a dry dress for Uzoka to change into and helped her gently to slip it on, giving her back some dignity. Uzoka was touched and humbled by this kindness. That night, as the full moon rose high over Ebenabo, the household gathered in the main hut to have a simple late meal. Amechi insisted that both Chibundu and Uzoka eat something substantial to regain their strength. Uzoka insisted on personally thanking Nneka and Ogbuefi Udoka the next day. But for now, they all agreed to keep the event private. They didn't want to become the subject of fearful gossip or have Udoka branded a witch by those who wouldn't understand. So, they maintained the story that Uzoka had returned from her cousin's house and the goat was just a stray that had since wandered off. In the coming days, the change in Uzoka was evident to all who knew her. She was softer in her tone, smiling gently at neighbors instead of scolding. When villagers commented that Chibundu looked happier or healthier, Uzoka would say, "Yes, I realized I was working hard too hard. She's just a child and deserves some rest and joy." Such words coming from her astonished people. Within the family, Uzoka kept true to her word. She treated Chibundu as if she were her own daughter. In the mornings, she would actually help Chibundu with chores or sometimes tell her to rest while she took over a task. Chibundu was initially uneasy with this, not wanting Uzoka to serve her. But Uzoka would insist, saying, "It is my way of making amends. Please allow me." They found a new balance. Chibundu continued to do her share of work, but now Uzoka worked alongside her, or at least did not overburden her. They would cook together, and Uzoka, to Chibundu's surprise, began teaching her recipes and techniques, praising her when she did well. "Your mother taught you how to slice these leaves finely, didn't she? You do it just like she did." Uzoka noted kindly one day as they prepared soup. Chibundu beamed at the rare compliment. Amechi, witnessing this harmony, was overjoyed. His own demeanor brightened. He no longer spent his days tense and anxious. He even picked up his old habit of telling evening folktales by the fireside, something he had stopped when the household turned sour. Now Chibundu and Uzoka would sit together listening, sometimes laughing at Amechi's animated impressions of tortoise or deer from the stories. The laughter in the compound, once a rare sound, became a nightly music. One evening, a few weeks after the incident, the family paid a private visit to the Iroko tree. Uzoka brought an offering of yam and palm oil to leave at the foot of the tree as a thanksgiving. She knelt and whispered a prayer only she and the spirit could hear, promising to be kind and just, thanking them for a second chance and perhaps apologizing for needing such a harsh lesson. Chibundu also silently thanked the tree and the ancestors for hearing her and for restoring her family beyond what she dreamed possible. Amechi stood with his arms around both his wife and daughter, silently grateful. And so, life moved on. Chibundu attended the next moonlight dance with Uzoka's enthusiastic blessing. In fact, Uzoka herself braided Chibundu's hair beautifully for the occasion and even walked out to the gathering like a proud mother. The villagers were pleasantly surprised to see Uzoka in such a good mood, and some joked that the visit to her cousin must have really put her in high spirits. Others remarked quietly that maybe Uzoka had learned something or seen something on that trip that changed her heart. Only a handful of people like Nneka and Ogbuefi Udoka suspected the truth of what had happened, but they kept the confidence. After that fateful period, life in Ebenabo seemed both ordinary and extraordinary to Chibundu. Ordinary because daily life went on with farming, cooking, festivals, and chores. Extraordinary because her home was now filled with an ease and warmth she had never thought possible under Uzoka's roof. One bright morning, Chibundu was sweeping the compound, as she always did, but this time Uzoka was beside her, humming a tune as she plucked stray weeds between the stones. Amechi was by the gate, carrying a new staff for himself. the tension lines gone from his face. As Chibundu swept dust toward the entrance, Uzoka jokingly hopped aside and said, "Careful now, don't sweep it on my feet." She laughed softly and Chibundu giggled, a sound that felt surprisingly free coming from her own throat. They had come a long way from the sacred girl and the sculling stepmother that greeted each down not long ago. Uzoka insisted on frying some plantains for Chibundu as a snack after the morning chores, something that would have been unheard of before. She called Chibundu affectionately, "My daughter, come taste this and see if it has enough salt." And Chibundu did, smiling and giving a thumbs up. When they went to the stream to wash clothes, Uzoka walked with her arm around Chibundu, and the other women there could hardly believe their eyes, one mother to another. "Is that Uzoka putting her arm around that girl like that?" The other woman shrugged. Who knows what changed her? But I'm glad that girl deserves some love. Indeed, for Chibundu, it felt as though she finally had a mother again. Not the same as her first mother. No one could replace her, but a new mother who had learned to love her. Sometimes, Uzoka will still break down and apologize again to Chibundu, especially if something triggered a memory, like the time they found that old pestle that Chibundu once tripped over. Uzoka burst into tears, recalling how she struck Chibundu that day, and she hugged her stepdaughter fiercely, saying, "Please forgive me again for that." Chibundu patted her back and said the past was gone. Amechi, true to his word, made sure to be an active protective father. If Chibundu was too tired, or if there was a heavy task, he would jump up saying, "No, I'll do that. My daughter has done enough today." Uzoka never protested or called Chibundu lazy again. In fact, she too would say, "Yes, Chibundu, go and rest or go play. You are young. You should have some fun." To be told to go play was such a startling freedom that at first Chibundu didn't even know what to do with herself. She wandered to visit Adoma and Oluchi, who welcomed her happily. They played by the riverbank, making dolls over the clay and plaiting each other's hair. It was a simple joy Chibundu cherished, though a part of her felt almost guilty enjoying free time. Uzoka noticed that hesitancy and would encourage her, "Go on, you have my permission." With a reassuring smile, gradually Chibundu learned to trust that this new reality was real and lasting. The New Yam Festival arrived, and it was a time of great celebration in the village. Amechi, Uzoka, and Chibundu attended together, dressed in their best. Chibundu wore a lovely blue wrapper and beads that Uzoka had given her. They were once Uzoka's own. A bright necklace that she handed to Chibundu, saying, "It will look prettier on you, my dear." At the festival, the family participated in the rituals, offering yams to the earth goddess in thanks for a good harvest. As Chibundu placed a yam in the shrine, she silently also gave thanks for the harvest of love and peace in her life. There was dancing and singing at the village square. This time, when the young girls gathered to perform the special dance they had practiced, Chibundu was among them, her feet moving gracefully to the drums, her face glowing. Amechi watched with pride, and Uzoka actually shouted with joy at the sight of Chibundu shining. Villagers nudged each other, noticing Uzoka's enthusiasm. Who would have thought Uzoka would one day be cheering that girl on like this? People marveled, but they accepted this as a happy change. One elder, who perhaps had an inkling of trust untold, commented quietly to Amechi and Uzoka when passing by, "The gods have been kind to you. May it continue so." Amechi simply bowed in respect, and Uzoka replied humbly, "We are grateful every day." Seasons passed, and the story of the goat's transformation stayed within the family. Chibundu wrote it down in a diary of sorts, a practice she started after learning a bit of writing from the village school teacher who came on market days. She hid those pages, but she wanted a record so that she could tell her children one day the importance of kindness and humility. In time, Chibundu did marry, as noted, and when she left her home to join her husband's family, Uzoka wept like a mother losing her child. Who will sweep my yard now? Uzoka broke through tears on Chibundu's wedding day, holding her hands. You will always be my daughter, Chibundu. Don't forget to visit. I won't forget, Mama, Chibundu promised, embracing her. The wedding was a joyous occasion. Amechi even danced merrily, and villagers said it was the best feast in years. If anyone noticed that one of the goats died for slaughter was suddenly spared and not killed inside the compound, no one commented on it except maybe Udoka, who chuckled knowingly. Amechi had, as a quiet homage to their experience, insisted that goats be set free outside the village afterward. In her new home, Chibundu often practiced the lessons she had learned. She treated everyone with respect and patience, and never let anger fester in her heart. Her husband adored her gentle nature, and his family appreciated how she brought harmony. When she had children, she raised them with love and without harshness, mindful of how childhood wounds can cut deep. Uzoka and Amechi grew old together contentedly. Uzoka never reverted to her old ways. If she ever found herself feeling irritated or jealous, as human beings mind, she would remember that day in the shade, looking out through a goat's eyes, and immediately she would calm herself. Instead of snapping, she would take a deep breath and speak kindly. It became a second nature. Sometimes, late at night, Uzoka would awaken from a nightmare of being back in that goat form, lost and frightened. On those nights, Amechi would comfort her, or if Chibundu was visiting, she would sit by her bedside and hold her hand, reminding her it was over. Those moments always reinforced their bond even more. The sacred Iroko tree remained a silent figure in their lives. Uzoka would occasionally send offerings of palm oil or kola there through Amechi or Nneka, just to say thanks. She never forgot that her faith was once held by that tree spirit. When Udoka passed away some years later, Uzoka and Chibundu made sure his funeral rites were grand, honoring the man who guided them. They even whispered a thanks over his grave. As word of mouth tends to work, a somewhat distorted version of their story began circulating generations later. Many details were changed or exaggerated. Some said the girl had magical powers. Others, that the stepmother was a witch. But the core message usually remained: wickedness was punished and goodness, especially forgiveness, was rewarded. One day, many years later, Chibundu sat under the shade of a tree, not the Iroko, but a fruit tree in her husband's compound, telling her own children a bedtime story. She had a daughter who was about the same age she was when Uzoka came into her life. The little girl named Nkem looked up with big eyes as Chibundu narrated a softened version of the tale. There was once a girl who was very kind, and her stepmother was very cruel. But the spirits of the land saw the girl's tears and turned the stepmother into a goat as punishment. Nkem giggled, finding the idea both funny and scary. Mama, is it a true story? She asked, as all children do. Chibundu smiled mysteriously and stroked her daughter's hair. It happened a long time ago, in a village not too far from here. Some says it's true. Did the girl ever love her stepmother again? Nkem pressed, concerned. Yes, my dear, Chibundu said softly, kissing her child's forehead. Because the stepmother learned to love her, so the girl forgave, and they became a happy family. The gods only did it to teach them a lesson. Nkem nodded thoughtfully. I would be scared if you turned into a goat, Mama. Chibundu laughed gently. You won't have to worry about that, sweet one. Just remember, be good and kind always. And if anyone is ever unkind to you, remember how powerful forgiveness can be, okay? Okay. The child agreed, though she was already yawning, the tale making her to sleep. As Chibundu watched her child drift off, she closed her eyes and silently sent a message of gratitude out into the universe, to her mother in the spirit world, to the ancestors of Ebenabo, to a Wefudoka spirit, and to anyone else listening up there. Thank you for everything. We are fine now. In the quiet night, a breeze ruffled the leaves of the trees, echoing that sentiment back as if in answer. And so ends the story of Chibundu, Uzoka, and Amechi of Ebenabo Kingdom. A story that began in tears and cruelty, but ended in laughter and love. A story that reminds us that the gods listen to the cries of the innocent, that justice may come in strange forms, and that the power of truth and mercy can break even the cruelest of curses. In the words of the elders, the moon may be hidden by clouds, but it is still there and will shine again. Just as the good in people can be hidden by anger or envy, but with a little divine nudge and genuine repentance, it can shine through once more, lighting up the darkness. The story teaches that cruelty never lasts. Justice will come, but the truest victory is mercy that changes hearts. Chibudu's courage to speak up and tell the truth brings judgment on evil, while her choice to forgive opens the door for healing. Uzoka's humiliation shows that pride and envy destroy a home, and real repentance is proven by new behavior. Amechi's awakening reminds parents to protect their children and not hide behind silence. In the end, truth frees, accountability corrects, and forgiveness restores, turning punishment into a second chance and a broken family into a peaceful one. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Chibundu on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with the journey, please show your love by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to turn the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.